now that the Rockets have locked up Clint Capella to a 5-year, $90 million deal, the team is now expected to bring in Carmelo Anthony once he clears waivers. A source is telling The Athletic that the Rockets players feel very positive about him joining. Mina, where are you? Let's get her on camera.
Not so positive.
Does he have anything left?
A little bit. Okay, I feel the same way about Melo that I kind of do about Dez, where I don't think he, there's a place for him somewhere perhaps, but it's not on the Rockets team that, should be contending, came so close to making the finals, because Domonique mentioned earlier you can't beat the Warriors by out-Warriorsing the Warriors, and the Rockets are a good example of a team that I think was constructed in a way specifically designed to go head-to-head with the Warriors, physical, on defense, played a different style, forced them into ISOs. By accepting Melo into the fold, I think they're going away from that identity that was successful. Look, we saw what he did in the postseason in Oklahoma City. He was basically unplayable by any metric. And for him to come in, and at the end of the season, he said, the idea of me coming on the bench is ridiculous. With that attitude into this organization in which he's already clashed with the coach in previous incarnations, to me, it just feels like a recipe for disaster. And I think, Domonique, in 6 months, much in the way you admitted I was right about Dez, you're going to admit that I was right about Melo as well.
Well, I will admit that you're right about the situation there, because I agree. I argued last week that I thought that they'd been better off to keep Ariza and Bamute over Carmelo in this situation, because the reason why they were competitive against the Warriors, yes, they had historically great offense, but because they were good on defense, and Melo certainly doesn't help you in that area. But where I draw the line is I think Melo still has something to offer. Like, he averaged 16 points a game last year, and that was considered a down year for him. And I get it. He's old. He's 34 now. He's getting old. But the type of game he plays, we saw those Melo highlights. He's not exactly an explosive player. Like, the type of game that he plays is a game that should be able to age well. And I understand he didn't make it work with D'Antoni before, but I think we are getting a different Melo and also a different D'Antoni. Yeah, okay. I think we are. You don't go through that year without learning something about yourself.
Okay, look, we all have something to offer as human beings, so I agree with you. Everybody has something to offer. But I don't think Melo has a lot to offer at this point as a basketball player, certainly as a starter. Certainly he's not what he was. You mentioned that he changed, but here's what happened, Domonique. He came into that season in Oklahoma City laughing at the idea that he would come off the bench. And then he came out of the season doing the exact same thing, scoffing at the notion that he is no longer the player he was. Does that seem to you like a guy who's accepted that he has a changed role in today's NBA?
I think that's a guy who wants to save face, frankly. It's like, they're going to ask you that question again. What else are you going to say? I'm still the man. I think, honestly, Carmelo knows, and this is my argument. While I don't think that Carmelo is a perfect fit for the Rockets, that's who they have. So this is my argument for Carmelo fitting with the Rockets, is the reason why they lost in the finals. Everyone points to the Chris Paul injury. Carmelo is someone who is good enough offensively to take a great bit of load off of Chris Paul and allow Chris Paul to be healthy in the final stretch. If they find themselves in this situation again, I think Carmelo could help, his ability to run an offense. And you remember when James Harden first started with D'Antoni, James Harden was laughing at the idea that he could become the type of playmaker and assist guy that he became, but he did in that offense. I think Carmelo, the new Carmelo, is different. He may be open to this opportunity, and I think under D'Antoni, he could be better.
So that this idea that Carmelo would have been the one who stepped up in the postseason in Chris Paul's absence, when they missed every three-pointer. I just was looking down at the Thunder's plus-minus with him against the Jazz. Let's see, when he was on the court, minus 58. When he was off the court, plus 32. Does that sound like a player who's going to come in and be the difference maker?
But that's assuming that the Thunder were using him properly and had the right idea. Like, that's one thing that he said, what I agree with, that they did not necessarily have a plan for Carmelo Anthony. This is the assumption, is that if he goes someone that has a plan for him, I think it's ridiculous for you to assume that he can't offer something to some team. I agree that the Rockets may not be the best fit, but he can offer.
Okay, we know he's not adding defense, but offense, probably off the bench, but the guy's a prolific scorer, so we all agree on that. But what, if anything, does he have to prove at this point in his career, Mina?
I think he wants to prove that he's not the guy we saw in that Jazz series for the statistics that I brought up. And it's possible that he's not that guy, because very few players are that bad in the NBA, right? So he definitely has somewhere to go up from there. The problem is, and this is where I disagree with Domonique, the best case scenario in Houston, for example, would be that he would accept the role, as that third option, that he would help them space the floor, that he would shoot. But he actually did do that at points in Oklahoma City. The problem is the shooting wasn't there. The execution wasn't there. It wasn't like they didn't know how to use them or what they wanted from him. It was that when he was in that position, not only was he terrible at defense, he wasn't shooting effectively either.
Yeah, I saw those numbers too, and his three-point shooting went down drastically last season. But I think you can argue it's more likely that was an aberration. Like, you look at his statistics throughout the rest of his entire career, Carmelo Anthony is a good shooter. Are you going to sit here and argue that Carmelo Anthony is not a good shooter?
No,
like,
but
we know he's a good shooter.
He's 34 years old, and there is a direction that statistics go in at sometimes at that age. It's far less likely that it would be like bloop, 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 bloop. And I think it's more likely that it would be going.
I don't think that he's going to be mid-career Carmelo, but I think last year was an aberration. It was a bad situation. He's a big city guy. He didn't want to be in Oklahoma City. He's going to play better in Houston. Yeah, that was it. It was a lack of nightlife.
Let me ask you this, though.